think back to a time you purchased something as a consumer that you were really, really excited for. So maybe, this will be different for everyone. Maybe it was like a nice vacation, or you took your mom or your partner out for a nice dinner. Maybe you bought yourself like a luxury pair of shoes or a handbag that you've been eyeing like for years and you saved up for, like whatever it is for you, like, your first car. It could be something small and meaningful too. Just a purchase that you were genuinely like excited for. Like you were like, here's my credit card. I cannot wait to buy this thing. And it's important to remember those positive experiences, because then you can think about, well, buying something isn't always, or being sold to isn't always a negative experience. So how can we create that positive experience for our buyers?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Society podcast. This is the podcast for anybody and everybody in the health and wellness industry that wants to grow their business. I'm your host, Alexa Cawley. I'm the CEO and president of Forever Friday Consulting, where I work with private clients one-on-one to help them scale their brands and reach amazing people. On this podcast, we talk to industry leaders and experts that have built really amazing brands within the health and wellness industry to teach you how to do the exact same thing. I've worked for some of the biggest names in the health and wellness field, like Lululemon and SoulCycle, and I take everything that I've learned, plus our industry's amazing experts, and bring it to you. All right, guys, let's get into the episode. It is a really good one, so drop me a line on Instagram at foreverfriday.co, and let's get to it. Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm super excited for you to hear this episode with Megan. She's super relatable, and the way that she talks to us about reframing the way that we message and the way that we sell on social media through our emails is just really relatable. She presented in the Friday Society membership a few weeks ago. So if you're in the membership, definitely make sure that you rewatch her training. And there's a few workbooks in there as well for you guys. If you're not a member, it's always a great time to join. It's only $50 a month and it's really great marketing advice and just the best group of people ever. So shout out to all the members. But yeah, I think a lot came up for us, for all of us, and me included, when she had this presentation around just how sales can feel really cringy and weird, and we totally reframe it in this episode, and I'm just really excited for you guys to hear it. So enjoy, and that's it. I'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Friday Society. I am here with Megan Smyth today, and if you're in the membership, you already know her because she presented in February around sales psychology. So after she had done that, it was so impactful for all of the members that I just knew I had to have her on the podcast so that all of you guys could hear all the great things she has to say. So we're going to be talking all about copy, sales funnels, all of the fun stuff that goes into the very cringy world of sales, and hopefully just making it not cringy and exciting and fun. So Megan, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I can't wait. All right. First things first, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into copywriting? Because I know that was not your original plan, and where you are right now.
Yeah. So no, copywriting was not my original plan. I did not daydream about becoming a copywriter as a little girl. It was a long and winding path, like most entrepreneurs. So my background's in the medical field. That's what I studied in school. And then I worked in medical research for a number of years. And I'd always loved writing from the time I was really, really little. But I was told, like most people who were interested in the arts, that's not a real career and I needed to be practical. So I was going to be a good girl and go to med school and get the degree, get the job, all the things. But then
the big girl job.
Yeah, the big girl job. But it turns out the big girl job was not it for me. was not so fun. I did it for, my first full-time job. I remember working full-time like over the summers when I was still in university. And then I was working, 2 more part-time jobs on top of that. And I was like, this is not it. Like going into the hospital every day from, 7 a.m. to maybe 4 p.m. and then commuting back home. And then at 6 p.m. you get home, you're exhausted. And I was like, this is not it. Yeah. And I'd always loved to travel. And so that was also a part of it that led me to look for something with a little more freedom and independence, something I could do remotely. And then when the pandemic hit, suddenly I had all this time on my hands to start looking at like, well, what can I actually do online, remotely, something that I really enjoy. And so I came back to writing, and I started off writing like a lot of copywriters. Started out writing content. So like blog posts and things like that. And at first it was amazing. I couldn't believe anyone was paying me to write. That seemed like the ultimate, the dream achieved. I was writing travel blogs and things like that. But the more I got into the online business world, the more some of my clients asked me to start helping out with launches of digital products and email marketing and sales pages. And that's when I stumbled onto copywriting. And I just fell in love with it because of that background in science. I'd always been fascinated by, human decision making, why we make the choices we do. And then combining that with the writing, I was like, well, how can we use words to drive human decisions? And that's what copywriting is really about. And so it just all kind of clicked together for me. And it's really a combination of those two passions for me, the art and the science.
I love that. Oh, I love that so much. All right. Well, there's so much stuff that we have to get into because we were sort of just, recapping earlier all the takeaways that I had from your presentation that I know my members have had. So first things first, you did something that was really cool when you presented to the members was you just asked point blank, how do you guys feel about copy and about sales writing and all of that? Can you share some of the questions or some of the words that came up that people said?
I love asking that question to people because I'm always like, I'm ready for the hate, essentially. And I get it. Like, I felt that way too. I think the first response in the chat was just like the vomit emoji. They're like, no, thank you. But I'm like, how does sales make you feel? Normally the response is some variation of icky, gross, uncomfortable, sleazy, slimy. I've heard it all. And so it's really fun because I think, and I hope that, through that presentation, I was able to challenge that belief and kind of flip it on its head.
Yeah, absolutely. What is it about sales that makes people feel so gross? And cringe was a huge word that came up. Like what is it? Like, what is it about sales that makes us feel like that?
I think it comes down to the fact that we've all been sold to. We're constantly sold to in today's world. And we know how that feels to be on the other side of things. And it's funny, I was just talking about this with a couple copywriter friends of mine, and we were talking about why women in particular resist the idea of cold pitching and like those hard sales methods. And it's something about like our hypothesis anyway, is that women are especially attuned to manipulation, and we can feel when things aren't genuine. And we know how it feels to be on the other side of that. And so we never want to be that person who's like, sending the DM or asking for the sale. It feels so uncomfortable because we don't want to make the other person uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I love that. So what then? So the solution is more authentic marketing, right?
Yeah, that really is, it's as simple as that. I use the term empathy driven marketing. You can use authentic, like whatever word feels good to you and connects to you. But the whole idea is, coming up with a sales process and a way of writing copy, of selling your products and services that feels good to you and to the people you're selling to. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's such a bummer, right? Because like, we want women to make money and we want women to be successful, but you can't be successful you can't make money unless you sell a product.
Yeah.
You sell a product. Like we need to talk about our product in a way that feels good. So it is sort of this catch-22 of, if you don't talk about your product, it isn't going to sell and then you're not going to do well. And then we don't have more women in power. So it is, it's such an interesting breakdown when you really look at it.
Yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about talking about this. That's why I'm so excited to join you and your community and just like speak about this. Like I could talk about it all day, every day. Women in sales and the power of and really owning like being a saleswoman is a part of your business. Like you have to make sales to stay in business. And there is a way to do it that feels good to you and feels empowering. And I think there's nothing more empowering than being able to take control of that sales process and own the revenues coming into your business.
Oh, I love that so much. Okay. So the first thing that I want to talk about was the first thing for me that made me feel really flipped upside down when you were presenting. I was like, oh, wow. Was you asked a question around when we feel really excited to buy something and like, think of the last time that you felt really excited to buy something. So I'm not going to, spoil it for everybody. Can you go a little bit into that, that mindset and how to apply that to our own business?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the way that I like to think of sales is an exchange of enthusiasm. So you're excited to, share this product or service with your customers, and they're excited to buy it from you too. And you only want customers in your business that are excited and happy to be there. So just remember, if they're excited to be there, it's a good thing for everyone. It's going to be better for your business in the long run. But yeah, the example I use in that training is to think back to a time you purchased something as a consumer that you were really, really excited for. So maybe, this will be different for everyone. Maybe it was like a nice vacation, or you took your mom or your partner out for a nice dinner. Maybe you bought yourself like a luxury pair of shoes or a handbag that you've been eyeing like for years and you saved up for, like whatever it is for you, like, your first car. It could be something small and meaningful too. Just a purchase that you were genuinely like excited for. Like you were like, here's my credit card. I cannot wait to buy this thing. And it's important to remember those positive experiences, because then you can think about, well, buying something isn't always, or being sold to isn't always a negative experience. So how can we create that positive experience for our buyers?
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, the handbag example I think is so important, or like when you bought a car, like, yeah, obviously that was something that, people get very, very excited about and can take like great pride in. Knowing that most of the people who listen to this podcast are in the health and wellness industry, what specifically do you think, like maybe what questions can you maybe ask yourself around like how to reframe that excitement about what people are buying from you?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I think this is such a fantastic industry to use that like enthusiasm example with, because there's so many, positive impacts that come out of that, investing in your health and wellness. Like you said it all right there, right? Like it's always a positive experience. So think about how this thing that you're selling to people is going to change their life for the better, because that's really what you're selling is going to be a positive impact on their health, their energy, their relationships. Like, because we all know like getting healthy or investing in your wellness is something that has that ripple effect. And it's not just going to be, you feel better, but that flows out into their relationships, their work, their energy, like all kinds of different things. So think about that positive impact. For example, let's say you're a Pilates instructor. Think about how Pilates has changed your life for the better, right? It's obviously something you love, you're passionate about. You could think of all those positive effects it's had for you and for your customers as well. Because I'm sure, working with people, you start to hear those positive stories from past customers and past clients. So just keep that in mind, that you are making a real positive impact on people.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I have a client who is working on a course right now, and she was on her landing page and she was like, I just don't know what to say. And I was like, this is for you 20 years ago. What did you feel? And what do you feel right now? And she was able to just totally change the way that she was approaching it. But it's like being in that mindset of, oh, I'm selling really gets people stuck. So is there anything maybe you can recommend to like getting unstuck from that, like, oh, I need to sell sort of mentality?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you already gave some great advice, because that is fantastic advice, is because the thing that I notice a lot with entrepreneurs and small business owners is a lot of times our ideal client is some past version of ourselves. And I think that's really true, especially for people and entrepreneurs in the health and wellness space, because a lot of times, like you're sharing that passion, it's something that's changed your life. And now you want to share that with other people. So you really are, when you're writing copy for your business, you can write that as if you're writing to a past version of yourself. And instead of, giving or thinking of it from the mindset of like, how can I sell to this person? Think about how we all know the classic reframe is like sales is service, and you're selling them and like it's of service to them. But if you want to go a bit deeper, think about that emotional impact, because as that future version of yourself that you are today, all the positive effects it's going to have and that incredible impact it's going to have on their life. So get excited about it the way you would if you were speaking to a past version of yourself.
I love that. Yeah. I heard something once that was really impactful for me. And it was that you don't need to be a mile ahead of your ideal client. You just need to be a few steps ahead. And that always really reframed it for me, that I was like, okay, I don't need to teach people, how to create a Coca-Cola style business, but I do need to teach people what I know about making things easier and more accessible and more sustainable when you're a small business owner, and like that I can teach. So it's always helpful, especially I think in the Pilates instructor example or any of these instructor examples, no one's saying you need to teach somebody how to run a marathon tomorrow, but you do need to be able to sort of relate back to like, okay, what were the steps that I went through to make my life a little bit better? And how can I teach my client how to do that as well?
Yeah, I love that. I love that reframe. And it's so true. And ironically, a lot of times we get that imposter syndrome thinking like, oh, well, I'm not, the world's leading expert in whatever the subject is. So I can't possibly sell this course or do this thing. Like, who would want to learn from me? We get so in our heads about it. But a lot of times people would prefer to learn from someone who is just a few steps ahead as opposed to miles and miles, because we can relate a lot more to that person who's just a little bit ahead of us. And that's the person we want to connect with and learn from.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Oh, I love that so much. It's so necessary to hear. Okay. So something else that you talked about a lot was the difference between the sales funnel and the buyer's journey. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and what those two things might be and how they're different?
Yeah. So these are both terms that get thrown around a ton. And I feel like when I was like new to this space, like there were so many misconceptions, so many competing definitions, but like what these are and how to use them. So the way, these are my definitions. If you Google them, you'll find a million different ones. But the important thing to remember is that the sales or marketing funnel is something that you create as a business owner. So a lot of people's marketing funnel might look like, for example, you have this podcast and you build your audience that way, you build your audience on social media, and then they go to your website and potentially inquire with you, and they're moving, step by step through that funnel closer to working with you. But the other side of that is the buyer's journey. And this is sometimes also called the user journey or the customer journey. It doesn't really matter what you call it. The important part is that's the journey that your customers are going through on the other side of that funnel. So it's the same journey, but it's from their perspective. And the biggest mistake I see in people when they're writing sales copy or marketing their business in general is that they're speaking or they're thinking of it, through that lens of the sales funnel. So, they're writing copy for top of funnel or bottom of funnel without thinking about like, where are these people like on their journey, towards the sale? Because it's really hard to bridge that disconnect, especially in a virtual business. Sometimes it's very easy to forget, like, where is that person on the other side of the screen? Like, what are they thinking and feeling as they read this on the other side of things, as opposed to just, what do I want to communicate as the business owner?
Yeah. I'm like, my mind is blown. What questions can you ask yourself and what tips can you give when writing this email to get out of that mindset of like, okay, this is email number 5 in my nurture sequence, instead of, hey, I'm talking to Megan right now and she's maybe feeling a little like blah, blah, blah about me. Like, what are some ways that we can use? I've heard, like write an email to a specific person. Like, what are the things that you recommend there?
Yeah, the biggest thing is really just empathy. So putting yourself in that person's shoes. And when I say where they are on their journey, that means, how familiar are they with your brand? Number one. So obviously you're going to speak differently to someone who's like just hearing about you for the very first time versus like a loyal customer who you're trying to retain. So how familiar are they with your brand? And then the solution you're selling, is this a product or service they've heard about before, or is it new? Because if they're hearing about it for the first time, you're going to use, different language. You're going to mention different things, versus if they're a long-term customer, like I said. And the other thing that I like to think about is especially writing sales copy, the questions I always ask myself are thinking about your customer or the person reading the email. What do they think, feel, and believe right now in their current situation? And then what do they need to think, feel, and believe in order to buy from you? So how can we bridge that gap and move them along that journey?
Wow. What do they need to think, feel, and believe in order to buy? That's so interesting. What emotions do you typically like to evoke in something like that? Because I'm thinking back to, what does somebody need to think, feel, and believe in order to buy a luxury handbag is different than what does somebody need to think, feel, and believe in order to, maybe opt in for a gym membership or commit to a private Pilates instructor. Like, what emotions do you actually like to evoke?
I love that question so much. So thank you for asking for it. The real answer is that it is different for every product. So as a copywriter, working with different types of clients, that's something I ask my clients when I work with them is how do you want people to feel, when they're interacting with your brand or landing on your website? And then how do you want people to feel when they buy from you so that I can kind of like reverse engineer that. But in general, I always lean towards the word empowered. I want people to feel like they're making an empowered buying decision and a choice they feel good about. And, depending on your brand, like for fitness, like a word that comes to mind is confident. You want them to feel confident in their decision. I come back to like the word excited, enthusiastic, ready to go. It depends on your brand. I think those are all really strong terms, especially in the fitness and health space. But some people might prefer a word like safe or supported.
I was just going to say supported.
Comfortable. Like they feel, like really good and like they trust you and they trust like this investment with you.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. It's so this is so interesting. It's such a rabbit hole I didn't think we were going to go down, but I'm happy that we are because it's like, so I do this thing, right? I have this marketing course called 5 Weeks to Waitlist It. It's a standalone marketing course. And one of the exercises, one of the modules is defining your core values. So it's an exercise that I used to do at Lululemon a lot when I was doing like trainings and stuff, where, you'd put up something on the screen and it had about 100, 150 adjectives. And you slowly, like you've probably done this exercise before, like you slowly, cut them out. And then at the very end, you're left with like your 5 main core values. Is there ever a time in which the emotions that you want someone to feel are not your core values? Because it feels like the things that we're saying of like, educated, supported, inspired, empowered. Like these are all the things that we want someone to feel every time they interact with our brand, right? So like, it's just a great reminder of like, these are always the words that should inspire our marketing. And like, that's your brand.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And it is true. I do ask my clients, like, in the onboarding questionnaire as well, what are your brand values? Because you want to. And it's something that infuses every aspect of your business. So, it just makes sense to come back to that when it comes to your marketing and writing copy and creating content and all of that. Like another example I think of it is client experience. Like, for me, I always want my clients to feel seen and understood. I want them to feel supported and celebrated. And so like I reverse engineer again, my entire client experience, like with intention to create those feelings in people. And so you can do the same thing with your copy. Think about like what words and values are really important to me and how can I infuse your copy with that to create that experience for people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such a great approach. And it just feels so much better the way that you're outlining things than I think the way a lot of traditional marketing does. So I love that. Okay. The next thing that really blew everybody's mind was talking about client objections. Can you elaborate more on this one?
Yeah, I love this one. I loved the reactions this got in the masterclass too. It was so funny. People are like, wait, we should like bring up the objections. Yes. So there's a couple, rules or guidelines to keep in mind for objections. And let me just say, objection handling is like traditionally a big part of the sales process. Like people are meant to have objections. It's more normal than not, for people to have hesitations before they invest in something. So if you're getting objections, like it doesn't mean you have a bad product. It doesn't say anything about you as a business owner. So I just wanted to start there. But yes, in terms of your copy, you should be the first one to bring up objections. So especially if you already know, what type of objections you're getting over and over again from people. So 2 most common ones are time and money, right? So you can call that out. You can say directly in your copy, I know you're hesitating because of X, Y, and Z, and then, counter it and explain like why you are still worth the investment, right? So don't shy away from addressing those things because I guarantee people are already thinking them. So don't worry so much. Like the common thing I hear is people are worried that by saying that in their copy, they're going to put that objection in someone's head. But in most cases, it's already there, right? So it's better to just be upfront about it and include that on the page because then what you're doing is they're going to read that and they're going to go, oh my God, is she in my head? How does she know that I was thinking those things and worried about that specific thing? And again, it's an opportunity for you to flip that on its head and really empower people.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do you where do you recommend you fit these client objections into sales sequence, emails, and on a website? Like, where do you typically have those?
Yeah, great question. So in terms of that sales funnel and buyer's journey, objection handling or objection countering usually fits towards the end of the sales process. So you don't need to bring it up and, like nurture email number 1 or 2. It's typically like further along that journey when people are really getting close to making a purchasing decision. So if you're sending, let's say like a sales email sequence, it'll be towards the end of that. And on a sales page or a website page, it'll be close to that like final call to action. So like pretty far towards the bottom of the page because they've already, they've got the information, they're considering it, they're reading testimonials, they're moving closer. And then they might just need that final nudge because, they've got that voice in their head that's, telling them all the reasons why this isn't going to work and, why this isn't the right time, etc. And so that's the time that you really come in with a powerful objection counter.
I love that. So with this objection placement, I guess, let's say you also mentioned, talking about your money back guarantee or refund policy or anything. And I also think that's another thing that a lot of people get nervous about, but it is super important. So can you talk a little more about the psychology of that and like talking about your refund policy?
Yeah. So in terms of refunds, that's an example of what's called a risk reversal or risk reduction sales technique. So it's exactly what it sounds like. You're reducing the risk of that investment for people. So one of the ways to do that is to offer some type of money back guarantee. And sometimes people get the money back guarantee a little twisted and they think it's something that's for them as a business owner. And they're like, you can get your money back if you fill out all this long list of conditions and you prove that you watched every module and you prove that you did this and that or whatever. That's not so reassuring to people. So just go with a simple blanket policy, 10 days, 30 days, whatever you want to make it. I promise you're not going to get that many people who are actually asking for refunds. It's not going to make a big impact on your bottom line. So just go with a straightforward guarantee. And again, the place to put that is like right down. So let's say like, your button on your sales page or your website, you can remind people like right beneath that button, like, just remember, like there's no risk, right? There's a money back guarantee that can be like the final push for people. And it comes back again to that word safe and comfortable, right? You want people to feel comfortable with the decision to invest with you. And one way to make them feel more comfortable with that is to reduce the risk of that investment.
Yeah. And it's like err on the side of being a good person. Like err on the side of being nice is kind of what I always like to say.
It's good faith, right? Like to say like, hey, and the other thing is if someone genuinely, like, let's say it's a course, they purchase your course and they generally are not happy with it. Like chances are they're just not the right customer for you. And it doesn't mean anything like about your course. Like it's not a personal statement about you. It's just, it's on them really. And you have to just kind of take that in good faith and say, you know what?
Totally okay. Yeah. Doesn't work out for us. Like that's totally fine. 100%. I think you're so right. I love that. Okay, great. Next thing, future frame. I feel like people are probably like furiously taking notes. I'm like in my head, I'm like jotting down everything. Future framing for your clients. This was something we talked about a lot. What does that look like?
Yeah. So future framing or future pacing is essentially when you are painting a picture of what your ideal client's life is going to look like with and without your product. So again, this is
huge, bingo, gold, huge. Can you say that? Can you say that one more time, please?
Yeah, we can pause there. It's funny, before we started recording, we were talking about how as marketers, like we think about these things like nonstop every day. And I forget that not everyone, is maybe familiar with that.
Yeah.
But it's something I always keep in mind writing copy, especially sales copy, is there's nothing more powerful than that transformation, right? You probably all heard this talked about, the power of the transformation and speak to the transformation. And it's like, okay, but what does that mean? So this is how you can do that tactically, is to, like I said, paint a picture of what your ideal client's life is going to look like both with and without your product. And when you're doing this, I try to make it as vivid and as specific as possible. So try to stay away from things about like, you'll feel less stressed or like you'll have energy. It's like, okay, but keep going a layer deeper. So if that's your initial, that's the initial benefit. Let's say you're selling some type of fitness class, the benefits that they're going to have more energy. It's like, okay, but why does that matter? Well, they need more energy to, play with their kids or, get off the couch, like after watching TV all night. They want to be able to enjoy their life and go on active vacations and do the things they love. And, and you just keep going like deeper and deeper. And how can you paint that picture in vivid detail of like what their life is going to look like? And then the reverse of that is, what is their life going to look like if they don't take action? Like if they don't buy this thing and things stay the same, like that's pretty powerful. A lot of times the fear of staying stuck where you are now can outweigh that fear of taking action and making the investment.
Yeah, that is massive. All right. So paint the picture for your client as if they're already working with you, and then also as if they're not, and get really specific about what the benefits are. I totally agree with you there. I see a lot of just vague messaging so much. I feel like you'll feel more energetic. And then people leave it there. I see that all the time. And I'm like, well, what does that, why does that matter to me? Like, why does that matter to me that I feel more energetic? Right. And it's like when I talk to small business owners, like you just, like not saying like you'll feel less stressed, but like, why? Like you'll feel better and you'll feel more at ease because your systems are automated and because you've tied your softwares together and like all these things that allow you to feel less stressed. But stress is just a feeling. So it's like, how are we tactically teaching people what we do for them?
Yeah. I think the specificity is key for all copy, like all sales copy, all content is so much more powerful when you can paint that specific picture. And, there's a couple tips I have around how to do that. The first one is to bring in the 5 senses. So the gut reaction when we're writing, it's very easy to say, you'll feel this. Or you'll see this, but what are they going to like, what in this vision of their life, what are they hearing? Like, what do they taste? What are they like, what's going on around them? Like, is there like, they're sipping warm tea by the window and like, there's a breeze coming in, like bring in all the senses to like really bring that picture really to life. Think about it kind of like how
I love this.
Right. Like that's how you bring a scene to life, is you bring in all 5 senses, make them feel like they're really living that with you.
You're inspiring me so much for the next email that I want to write.
Oh, good.
Like so much. I love this. Okay, cool. Okay. So you said you had a few tips. So that's one of like pulling in the senses.
Okay. Yeah. So the first one is the 5 senses. The second one that's really, really great for finding specific examples is to pull from your voice of customer research. So these are things that your clients or customers have said to you or about your product or service, like word for word. So, and you can use this for what I call the before imagery and the after imagery. So what was their life like before they worked with you and after? And sometimes people have like the most wild specific ways. They're like, before I had like, one project I was working on with a client, like, I was going through her clients, like testimonials and things like that, like looking for these types of examples and these types of messages. And one of her clients said like before they worked with her, they felt like they were like floating out on a dinghy in the middle of the ocean all alone. And it was so vivid and specific. Like, and that was so much more powerful than saying, I was really stressed and overwhelmed, right? Like this man was really going through it. He'd already done my work. I always say like, as a copywriter, the best messages come from your clients. They're not written by marketers. They come directly from your clients. So if you can go back through testimonials, or if you have DM conversations or anything like that with your clients, or even if a client says something on a call, client calls or classes are like one of the most underrated places to get this type of research and these messages. So the next time a client says something to you after a class, like about, how they were feeling, whether it's before or after, if they're like, I feel so much better now than I did before. If they say something that kind of, it impacts you, it's going to impact your clients as well. So take a moment, write that down, and then use it. Put it in your copy.
Yeah. I love that. Like always just be writing that stuff down in your notes. There's no reason not to.
My notes app on my phone is like is
crazy.
The longest. Yeah.
I know.
All these little snippets.
I know. Mine is too, but I love it. Like, I know it's an organized mess. So
It's a chaotic. Yeah. It's chaotic, but I do love it. Yeah. That's great.
Okay. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about was always having a theme or a goal for an email. Can you elaborate a little bit on that and what that looks like for people?
Yeah. I can definitely talk about, email, it's 100% true for and especially important, but I think any piece of copy or content that you create for your business, you should start with the goal in mind. So never create content or, write a piece of copy just for the sake of like, well, I have to write this, I have to produce content as a business owner, because then it kind of just feels like drudgery and no one wants to do that. And if you don't have a goal, the people reading it aren't going to know what they want you or what you want them to do. So for email, for example, a lot of us, if you send like a weekly newsletter, you approach it with your like, well, I'm going to send this out because it's Tuesday and I need to send an email. But thinking of it with a goal really just lets you be more intentional. And I want to be really clear that the goal doesn't always have to be directly related to sales. So as a sales copywriter, I do like to think of things in terms of that buyer's journey. And I do think every piece of copy should be moving people along that journey closer to the sale. But that doesn't mean that every email you send, you're asking people to buy your product. It just means keeping that journey in mind. Well, how can we move people along the journey? So for example, your goal with an email might be to build trust with your audience. It might be to build connection, like on the personal side of things. Maybe you're, sharing a bit more of a personal story so they can get to know you as a founder and connect a little bit more with you. So building trust that way. It could be to build authority. So maybe you're sharing like client results or testimonials, and none of those things are directly selling your product, but they are moving people closer along that journey towards the sale.
I love that the goal doesn't have to be sales focused, but there does still need to be a goal. I think that's super important. Yeah. I love that. Any last tips that you want to share before we hang up?
Oh, I love this conversation so much.
I know, me too. I know their brains are probably like, oh my God, with all the fun things we talked about. So I'm like, I don't want to overwhelm you guys too much.
Yeah, we don't want to give you information overload here. I hope and if it's a lot, take one technique or like one strategy that, if you're hearing about all of this for the first time, start with one thing and implement that like into your business, your copy, and then come back and worry about the rest because it's a lot to incorporate all at once. So, that said, if I could leave people with one thing, it would really be that empathy has to come first in your marketing and copy. So no matter what you're working on in your business, copy or otherwise, really put yourself in your customer's shoes and think about those questions. What do they currently think, feel, and believe? And, how can I speak to them in this moment? What do they need from me? What do they need to hear? And how can I support them on that journey?
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. Okay, Megan, where can people find you? Because I know they're going to want to know more. And guys, if you love what you're hearing, if you join the membership, you always get all the access to everything in the past. So Megan's webinar is up there along with the workbook and all that fun stuff. So just wanted to say that. But Megan, where can everybody find you?
Yeah. So easiest place to connect with me is on my website. So just my name, it's megansmyth.com, or on Instagram, I'm at Copy by Meg, and you can slide into my DMs anytime you want to talk about sales or copywriting. I'm always there to answer all your questions, or if you just want to say hello.
I love that. I will link all of that stuff in the show notes. Megan, thank you so much. This was so helpful. Again, I feel like I could listen to you talk about this stuff all the time because I always get something new. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
All right, guys, that's our episode. I hope you loved it. As always, please leave a review. Let me know what you're loving. Share it to your social media stories. Tag me, tag the guest. And if you need extra help or you want to just take things further in your business, I have a bunch of free resources for you guys at foreverfriday.co/resources. There's a quiz you can take to help you identify where the gaps are in your marketing. You get a prescription plan, all that sort of stuff. So enjoy, have fun, and I'll see you next week.